Okay, perfect. So I'll just keep admitting people as they come. So thank you everybody who has joined us tonight for our Ontario Volunteer Impact webinar. My name is Nikki, for those of you who don't already know me, and I'm with the Ontario Regional Team. And I just want to start off by thanking everybody who is joining us tonight. We have both brand new and seasoned volunteers who have RSVP'd, and some who volunteer across multiple projects and multiple events. And you all know that every volunteer here makes an incredible impact on CF Canada and our mission to end CF. So tonight specifically, we're going to spotlight the incredible advancements in research, healthcare, and the registry that are made possible through volunteer support. And specifically, we're going to share how volunteering with our Charitable Gaming program across Ontario can have the potential to raise significant funds for all of these programs. So we're going to chat a little bit at the end of the webinar about what charitable gaming is and how you can get involved. But to start off, I'm going to pass it off to my coworker in the Ontario Regional Team, Jana.
Hi, everybody. First off, thank you so much for all coming. And I work in the Ontario region, specifically Niagara, Peel, and Hamilton. And I have the privilege of working with the most amazing team of volunteers. So just want to give a shout out to our volunteers. And just to give you just a few highlights of our agenda tonight, we're very pleased to have members of our own team, Paul and Jana, and to also be joined by Dr. Lisa Strug and Erin Fleisher. And we're going to have presentations by each, and then we'll have the opportunity to have some questions afterwards. So now I get the pleasure of introducing Dr. Paul Eckford. And Paul has worked as a researcher for SickKids, and he joined CF Canada in 2021. And he is our program director of research, and he runs all our research funding programs. We are so fortunate to have him on our team.
Oh, thank you for that really nice introduction. And thank you everybody for joining us today. So we wanted to start off by just acknowledging the land that the Cystic Fibrosis Canada National Office is located on. Is a traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse nations, Inuit and Métis people. I'd also like to acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississauga and Chippewa bands. Well, again, thank you for joining us. And if you'll indulge me, I'd just like to talk for a few minutes about the research programs at Cystic Fibrosis Canada and our history of supporting groundbreaking research in this country. So CF Canada, as you all know, has been around since 1960, and I believe the first research grants were awarded in 1962. And since that time, thanks only to all the really great volunteers that we have who work so hard to raise funds for us, we've been able to invest over $200 million into research in this country, which is just an incredible number. And it's really all thanks to our volunteers that we're able to do that. And we've had some really amazing impacts. So the high-fat diet that was the staple for a long time was really developed in this country, and it helped CF patients manage the difficult disease. And it was really crucial to helping in the earlier days to keep people healthier for longer. And of course, the discovery of the gene that everybody knows about. So the picture that I show here on the side is one that you may have seen before. We see a lot in research, and Lapchi Choi and Jack Reardon, who were both at SickKids at the time, and Francis Collins, whose name you might recognize as he went on to lead the NIH in the US. And he was a researcher in the US collaborating with them to discover the gene. And you can see the cover of Science in September of 1989. With sort of the big announcement about the cystic fibrosis gene. And really the discovery of the gene helped us to understand a lot more about the CF TR protein that the gene makes. And Lisa's certainly going to talk a lot more about CF genetics as we move through the presentation here. But so Canadian researchers had great input into identifying what the CFTR protein itself does. And it acts as a chloride channel, as I think everybody knows. And then that sort of led, those two developments led to researchers identifying CFTR modulator drugs like Trikafta and Kalydeco. And Canadian researchers have certainly been involved a lot along the way, including helping us to understand better how these molecules work and setting the stage for the next breakthroughs in CF modulator drugs. And I could go on all night. To suffice to say that Canadian CF researchers have really had an outsized impact globally. And again, it's due to the volunteers who raise the funds to allow them to do the work. In the past, before the pandemic, we were able to invest about $4 to $5 million into research annually to support Canadian CF researchers. And the pandemic certainly was a challenge. It's a challenge for everybody in their lives, and it's been quite a challenge for the organization as well. As you can imagine, and as you know, and I'm sure most of you have participated, most of our fundraising events tend to be in-person events in communities, which were incredibly challenging or impossible to do during the pandemic. And those things we're hoping are going to come back more and more. Certainly we had the walk and a lot of the other events this year we were able to do, or we'll be able to do later in the year, and get back to having people together. But it's still a challenging environment right now for fundraising across the board for all charities. But we know that the gaming revenues that we're going to talk about can have really a huge impact on what we're able to fund in research, especially right now when some of those other fundraising events and things have challenges still in bringing people together. And this just talks a little bit about some of the programs that we fund generally. So we fund research grants that go to scientists at research institutes, universities, and hospitals across Canada, and are in the sort of more basic science area. So understanding some fundamental things about the CF gene or protein or the disease or some aspect of the disease or bacterial infections, you name it, as long as it's related to the more fundamental, basics of CF, then we can fund in those areas. And we also have equivalent research grants that are more clinical in nature, so that are having a closer, more direct impact on patients. So these are often held by people who are researcher clinicians who might see CF patients, but then also do some clinical research, such as a clinical trial or something that's much more closely linked directly to the patients. Then we have another stream that's called our earlier career investigator awards. And these are for people who are just starting out in their first few years, having their own independent lab and research team. And one of our big goals, as you'll see, is to try and support those people who are just getting into CF research, to make sure that we keep them there and we attract in really strong people that we need in CF moving forward. And then we also fund individuals who have just completed a PhD or an MD degree and who are doing research in a lab of another researcher. So working on their team, learning so that they can hopefully one day have their own lab studying CF as well. And it's important that we fund these people earlier in their careers to keep them in the CF field. We're going to be bringing some new types of funding as well that we hope are going to be innovative and stimulate innovation with our researchers. One is our seed grants program, which is going to be smaller amounts, and they're going to be sort of ways for researchers to quickly study a new idea and see if it's going to be of value or not, and then they can use the data that they generate to apply for more funding. And we're also going to hold these team grants, which are going to be bigger grants, and they're going to focus on certain areas. And I'll talk about what those areas are in a little bit. We've found that over the time that we've been funding research, when we fund bigger teams and groups of researchers working together on a problem, that's where we can have some really big impacts sometimes. So we're really looking forward to launching these programs. And you may have heard that we're developing a new research strategy. And when I say a new research strategy, it's really we're developing a research strategy because we didn't really have a formal strategy in the past. What we did is we said, okay, we're going to fund good quality science that's related to CF. And the researchers can decide what area they want to study. And as long as it's really good quality, high impact, and relates to CF, we'll consider funding it. And we want to be a little bit more intentional in how we fund research going forward. It doesn't mean that we're going to be restrictive, but we're going to be a bit more intentional with how we fund, and hopefully with the outputs that we get from that funding because of it. And we'll be launching the research strategy soon, so keep an eye out. Probably beginning of next year, there'll be a big splash with our research strategy, and you'll learn all about it and how you can help us with that. But I wanted to give you just a tiny bit of a sneak peek here to tell you that there's really going to be an emphasis on those who are not benefiting from highly effective modulators like Trikafta, because we feel it's important that we keep doing research to help those people who aren't benefiting. And there's going to be a lot more engagement of the CF community and people who have CF in our efforts, sort of defining what the researchers do and more along the way as well. So that's going to be a really interesting piece, I think, for our community. There's also going to be a focus on working faster and having more direct impacts on the lives of CF patients, and enhance efforts to develop our research environment that we have. So even more focus on those people earlier in their careers and getting them into the CF field and keeping them there. And really bringing in those people that we know that we're going to need for the next generation of breakthroughs. Because we have some really great people who have done some really amazing things, but we know that we also need to bring in new and different people with different expertise to help us with the problems that we know are going to become a bigger focus in the future now that things are changing. So that's just a little bit about the research strategy. I hope I piqued your interest in with that little bit of a description, and watch for more information coming a little later on in a few months. So I wanted to just talk briefly, and I'm almost done here, but I just wanted to talk briefly about our community health priorities. So in 2021, and you may have participated in this, we had a big survey on the CF Canada website where several hundred, I think it was over 360 people participated to tell us what different areas or what different things we should prioritize in research. And most of them relate to health impacts of people with cystic fibrosis. And you can see, so we started off with a bigger list through the survey, and then we had a very intense workshop for about a half a day with 28 different individuals with different experience with CF. And we worked on sort of discussing and whittling down the list to what ended up being our top 11 priorities. We tried to make it the top 10, it didn't quite work. So we have We have 11 here, but I think they're all really interesting and really important. And you can see, I mean, obviously people want a cure for CF, and we know that. But there are also many other important things that we need to think about with CF. And one that ranked very highly was to understand the mental health impacts, which I think people are recognizing more and more now, some of the challenges that come along with cystic fibrosis in terms of mental health and emotional wellness. And you'll see there's still a lot of emphasis on infection and figuring out ways to better detect and improve the treatment there. CF-related diabetes ranked quite highly as well. And we know as people are aging, we're expecting that we're going to see more individuals with this challenge. And the entire category of understanding health issues for people who are living longer, because we know people are living longer with CF. And in a way, it's kind of nice to think about the fact that we need to start studying those health issues for people who age into their 50s and beyond, because in a way, that's really encouraging that these are becoming important issues that we have to deal with now. And you can see the rest of them, and I think they're all really important. And so what we're doing in our research programs is we're mainly focusing on people who aren't benefiting from those CF modulators like Trikafta. And we're also focusing on these 11 different health priorities because we know they're important for our community. And I just briefly wanted to mention some of the new research that we've started funding, and I put some of those same icons beside, and I'll just mention a couple of these things. I'm not going to go through this list here, but you can see Dr. Avgay in British Columbia is looking for new compounds to treat mycobacterial infections or NTM infections you might be aware of, which can be particularly nasty lung infections that are very difficult to treat. So his research is focusing on trying to find new molecules to treat this bacteria. And then Christine Baer at SickKids is looking at taking nasal cells from different people with CF with different mutations and looking at their response to modulator drugs like Trikafta in the lab and seeing if in a person who starts taking Trikafta, is their response in their lungs, is their improvement in their lungs the same as what we see in the nasal cultures in the lab? And if there's that correlation there, then Christine thinks that she'll be able to use those nasal cells from people with mutations that aren't approved for Trikafta and be able to predict if those people are going to improve on Trikafta as well. And the idea ultimately is to help expand access to more people who are going to benefit to Trikafta. And you can see some of the other titles here. Brad Kwan in BC is looking at inflammation and immune biomarkers when people are treated with, this is basically Trikafta here, when people are going on Trikafta as well. And we have lots of other interesting research. Dr. Levy in Quebec is looking at certain compounds that can be found in cranberry juice and seeing if in higher doses they help with intestinal inflammation and issues in the GI tract. And these all really align with those priorities that we were talking about. And certainly there are others on the list and others that aren't on this slide. But I just wanted to point out a few of the different research areas that we're focusing on that we think are going to have strong impacts on CF patients as we move forward. And I'll turn my attention for one slide now to some of the gaming funds directly that is going to be a big part of what we're talking about today. And I just took the period of 2018 to 2022. And we have to keep in mind that those also include some of those pandemic years where it's been difficult to partake in some of these gaming programs, but still. During the period of 2018 to 22, nearly $200,000 was raised in Ontario bingo revenues that went directly to supporting these researchers. So it's not a tiny amount of money. It's actually really significant and really impressive. And when we look across Canada at that same period of time, with a variety of different types of gaming that is done in different provinces, nearly $1 million from those gaming efforts went to support researchers. And the researchers in Ontario who directly benefited from the gaming revenues were at institutions sort of across the province: University of Ottawa, McMaster University in Hamilton, Hospital for Sick Children, and the University of Western Ontario. So these funds are benefiting researchers at multiple different institutions, studying multiple different CF problems, and are really helping us to support more CF researchers. So very, very important source of revenue for us to support research. And now it's my pleasure to introduce one of those researchers who's going to tell you a little bit about her research. So Lisa Strug is a professor at the Department of Statistical Sciences and Computer Science, and cross-appointed with biostatistics at the University of Toronto. And she's also senior scientist in the program of genetics and genome biology at SickKids. She leads the Data Sciences Institute and multiple others. She's the leader of the Canadian CF Gene Modifier Consortium. She's the associate director at the Center for Applied Genomics, which is a sequencing facility at SickKids. And I could just go on and on and on. But I'm going to stop talking and let Lisa talk about some of her research that was supported in large part by some of the gaming funds that we've been talking about today. So Lisa, take it away, and I'll advance through your slides. Just let me know. So I'll flip to the first one now.
Great, thank you so much, Paul, and it's a real pleasure to be here and to have the opportunity to talk to the individuals who are raising money to help push forward, our research. So, what I wanted to do today is just tell you a little bit about the history of the Canadian CF Gene Modifier study, which is CF Canada has been funding since 2009. And so when I first came to SickKids in late 2007, I was brought to SickKids because there was a hypothesis that, we know that individuals with CF have CF2, CFTR mutations that cause their disease, but we also know that individuals with the same CFTR mutations have really variable disease severity. And the hypothesis was that the differences in across individuals are due to their genetic background. So other genes besides CFTR that can impact the disease severity across individuals and across CF affected organs. And so at that point in time, the genetics community realized that in order to try to identify these other genes and to try to understand what, whether there was one, whether there was hundreds, whether there was a few other genes, we needed to build, large studies with many individuals with CF and build international consortia and obtain the genome sequences of individuals so that we can put that data together to try to understand the commonalities across the genomes in individuals who share aspects of their CF disease, like CF-related diabetes, like severe and frequent exacerbations, like early onset to Pseudomonas infection or intestinal obstruction at birth. And so having trained as a statistical geneticist and in those sort of methodologies to bring genomes together to try to, what we say, map those genes, I came to SickKids to try to do exactly that and identify these genes. So this picture here on this slide is the model that we were working with since 2007. It was the hypothesis. So the hypothesis is, if you look on the left here, you have a triangle, and the triangle lists, many of the CF affected organs. And on the right-hand side, you can see the sort of model of the cause of variation in those CF affected organs. So for example, we know that, you're not going to see, high sweat chloride concentrations if you don't have 2 CFTR mutations. And really, those 2 CFTR mutations explain this high sweat chloride concentration. But as you look at other CF affected organs, like the exocrine pancreas, or like, so that we know CF individuals are pancreatic insufficient, or the endocrine pancreas, where the source of CF related diabetes, or intestinal obstruction, or liver disease, or the CF airways, the model becomes more complex. And this was the hypothesis we were working on, where, it might be a simple cause of increased sweat chloride in the sweat duct, but when it comes to the airways, that there would be many different genes that contribute to variation in the airway, as well as the environment, like pollutants or bacterial infection, that impact the variation that we see in individuals with CF, even who have the same 2 CFTR mutations. Some have very severe lung disease, and others have a more mild lung disease. And so the goal was to work with this model and try to identify these modifier genes. And so hence we launched the Canadian CF gene modifier study. So Paul, the next slide, please. Okay, so what was the goal of the CF gene modifier study? First of all, I mentioned, and here's sort of a schematic on the right here of the model for what we were trying to do. So basically, we launched a national study. We wanted to have capture the whole Canadian CF population. If we could, we wanted all individuals in Canada with CF to participate in this study. And we have amazing participation from the CF community of over 75% of individuals with CF across Canada that are enrolled and participating in our study. Every province has clinics that are participating and enrolling individuals when they come for their regular clinic visit, and when they obtain their regular blood work. If they're open to it, they provide an extra tube of blood for us, and that blood is sent to SickKids, where we extract the DNA. And so we have, like I said, DNA from over 75% of Canadians with CF. And then there's the wonderful CF registry, and we're able to connect our study with the CF registry data. So we have longitudinal information on the disease experience of all of these individuals who have agreed to participate. And so we know whether they were born with an intestinal obstruction, or what age maybe they acquired CF-related diabetes, or the number of exacerbations. And we were able to have all of that information, as well as what CF-directed therapies that they're on. Are they on Trikafta, for example? And what was their experience on that? So we know that not everybody is eligible for Trikafta, of course, and Paul mentioned that earlier. There are individuals, and there are individuals in Canada that have very unique mutations that aren't being studied really anywhere else in the world. So it's very important that we include those individuals here as well, so that we can identify potentially other therapeutics that would work for those individuals, because if we don't do it in Canada, it won't be done, and it really won't be done anywhere unless we can really make the case for it. So it's important to be able to study Canadian specific mutations. And so really, so once we have that DNA, right, and we have all of that clinical information, then at the Center for Applied Genomics, this is a national genome sequencing infrastructure, we can sequence the genomes of all of the participants. So we have, like I said, so not just the CFTR gene, but we have all of the genes in each of these individuals' genomes, so that we can put them together and analyze this large data set to be able to identify those modifier genes, those pink dots that I showed you earlier. So really the goal of the Canadian CF gene modifier study, and in collaboration with other studies that are happening internationally in the US and Germany and France and in Italy, we have all come together to try to identify some of these genes. And the goal is that if we can identify some of these genes, then we can use them to build predictive models of disease severity and therapeutic response. So let me give you an example. So some of these genes we've identified, we were able to show that we can now use a variation in the genomes and put together a score to predict the age at which someone may develop CF-related diabetes. And that's really important, because if we know that there's a high chance that an individual is going to develop CF-related diabetes at an early age, we may increase the monitoring and the testing using for CF-related diabetes, and we may be able to intervene, because we know that if we don't, then we'll see, impact on lung function, and we can see all kinds of negative impacts. So it's very important to understand and be on top of the onset of CF-related diabetes. And we have other investigators from across Canada who are using this data set, and for example, Brad Kwan, to try to build similar predictive models for exacerbations using the gene modifiers that we have already identified as well. So it's not only a resource for my team at SickKids, but it's a resource for other individuals who want to be able to ask other similarly impactful questions across the country and internationally. And those sorts of studies and approvals to use this data go through the CF registry at CF Canada. Another major breakthrough that we were able to show in the past few years is some of those genes that we identified, the pink dots. So on the previous slide with the triangle, I actually had listed some of the genes that over the years we've been able to identify. One of those genes that we identified, we actually were able to show that it also impacts how well an individual will respond to CF-directed therapies like Orkambi or Trikafta, because we know that individuals on Trikafta, for example, have a variable response to that drug, right? So it is an amazing therapy, and we're seeing incredible response to that therapy, but not everybody responds at the same level. And there are several people who really could benefit from moving that distribution over, that improvement in lung function over. And so we were able to show that actually one of our modifiers is associated with the response to Trikafta or Orkambi. And that's really important, because you could imagine that if that's the case, if we can have not just a CFTR directed therapy, but if we have, this is a gene called SLC26I9, which is also a chloride channel, we can imagine targeting that gene and adding it to the combination of therapies that would be used by individuals with CF for their treatment. And in fact, after identifying that particular gene, there have been several studies that have actually shown that this particular modifier gene physically interacts with CFTR and improves its function at the cell membrane. So, now it's been reported to be one of the most exciting alternative targets in CF to date. There are several groups internationally that are now trying to target this and build therapies around this. So that, I think, is another important discovery that has been funded over the years by CF Canada, and we ourselves are also have small molecules that we have identified through a drug screen as well to target this particular gene. The other exciting aspect of this gene is not only that it could be a therapy could be added to Trikafta, but for individuals who don't have an approved therapy like Trikafta, so individuals with nonsense or splice mutations where they don't actually make a protein that can be fixed from CFTR directed therapies, this particular gene SLC26A9 everybody has, and so it could itself be targeted as a therapy in individuals for whom CFTR directed therapies, that paradigm just could not work. So this is a really exciting area and a discovery that came out of this study, as well as all of those predictive models. And I mentioned we've identified several genes now that populate our triangle, and some of them impact your susceptibility to infection, which may provide therapeutic targets for infection phenotypes as well. So that's sort of a quick view of the Canadian CF gene modifier study and the impact it's had since 2009. And really, I just really want to thank everybody here for raising all of that money that can help us to push forward our identification of these alternative therapeutic targets and push medicines for these targets forward, as well as our predictive modeling. Thank you very much, and please feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Lisa. That was really exciting, and it's a great story of how you started out looking at some of the basic genetics, and now you're able to move it into predictive tools to help people with their care, and also potentially eventually to different therapeutics that can help people who aren't benefiting or could benefit more. So it's really an amazing story, and we're really glad that you're doing this work and that we can partner with you to do that. So thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we're going to move on now, and I'll introduce Jana, who is our Director of Healthcare, who joined CF Canada just a little while back. And we're really excited to have her. And she's going to be talking a little bit about how the gaming funds can really help in our clinics and our healthcare programs. So Jana, please go ahead.
Thanks, Paul, and good evening, everyone. Nice to see you. So, Paul, you're right. This is actually, yesterday was my third anniversary of my third month here. So haven't met most of you on the phone call, but really looking forward to meeting with you in the future. And thank you so much, Lisa, for that overview of the fantastic research that you're doing. So similar to the slide that Paul was talking to a few slides back about research, I just wanted to give you a sense of how CF clinics are actually directly benefiting from the charitable gaming funds. So you can see from the slide that over the past 4 years, approximately $670,000 raised went directly to the CF clinics. And the clinics that you see on the slide is really an example of how that region's fundraising efforts went directly to their regional clinic. So if you fundraised in Ottawa, let's say, then it would go basically, to your CF clinic. If you can change the slide there, Paul, please. And so I'm going to talk less about the overall healthcare program and more about one particular aspect of it through our grants programs. So our healthcare program is right now, it's getting a huge overhaul, and we're really hoping to engage the entire CF community like yourselves to shape what this program is going to look like over the next year. And it also includes some of the health priorities that Paul mentioned a while back. So just wanted to put a plug in there. Stay tuned, and hopefully giving you a sneak peek over the next several months. But in terms of sort of going back to the clinic incentive grants and going back to the clinic benefits, these gaming funds are disseminated in the form of what we call clinic incentive grants. So these grants are given each year to every Canadian CF clinic that applies. So that's all the pediatric and adult clinics, to use for 3 primary purposes. So support with the Canadian CF registry, continuous learning for clinicians, as well as outreach sites. And Erin and I will briefly expand on that in the next few minutes. Next slide, please. Great. So in terms of the continuous education piece, so money from the grants allow CF clinicians to attend learning events and conferences to increase their skills and really learn about what's going on in the CF community and best practices in CF care. So the landscape of cystic fibrosis, as you know, is changing so much that our clinicians need to be up to date with the latest evidence in medical treatment and research. The next piece is the funding for the outreach clinics. So some clinics, as you know, span a huge geographical area, and some of these patients are from far away, they're from rural and remote areas, so they don't get the opportunity to come in person every 3 months. And so in some areas, you know, the clinics apply for some funding to have like a satellite outreach clinic that's offered for some virtual appointments or some patient monitoring. So, you know, we're going to continue to fund some of those pieces, and they're certainly in high demand. So lastly, if we can change to the next slide, and I know I'm rushing through this a little bit, we have the Canadian CF Registry. So some of you folks may have heard the recent buzz on social media around the Canadian CF Data Registry, and we're going to play a brief clip from our director of the Canadian CF Registry, Stephanie Cheng, to give us a little bit more information. She wasn't able to be here tonight, but she wanted to talk briefly about what it actually does. I think
My name is Stephanie Cheng, and I'm the director of the Canadian CF Registry. I have a background in statistics and epidemiology, and I manage our CF Registry team and the day-to-day operations of the registry. The Canadian Cystic Fibrosis Registry is a national database of people in Canada living with CF. Anyone followed at a Canadian CF clinic can choose to participate. For anyone who has been consented to participate in the CF Registry, their health data is entered into the registry's secure web-based platform by clinic staff. This data is used by CF Canada, CF clinics, and CF researchers to advocate for the CF community and to do research to learn more about the disease. The Canadian CF Registry has been a key resource since it was created, no more evident than in our advocacy work the last several years. For example, without the CF Registry, we wouldn't have been able to determine how many people in Canada had certain genetic mutations and was therefore eligible for specific CFTR modulator therapies, such as Trikafta. A great place to start is our CF Canada website under Our Programs, Canadian CF Registry. We have also recently published a blog sharing some behind-the-scenes information on the CF Registry. Click the link in our bio to learn more.
Great. So as Stephanie mentioned, the CF Registry is really an important tool for many purposes, including clinical care, research, our clinical trials network, and of course our advocacy work. And I believe, Erin, you're going to be touching on that in a little bit as well. So really the funds used from the clinic incentive grants are to support data entry into the registry. So we know clinicians are very busy and they need data entry support. So this money really relieves some of that data entry burden. Next slide, please.
Here we go.
Okay, great. So I'm going to end off here just giving you a quick snapshot of what information you can gather from the data in the CF Registry. So data is available on demographics of patients, CF treatment and care. You can get health outcomes and median survival rates. And like Stephanie said, if you have any questions about the registry, I can certainly connect you with Stephanie after the webinar, or certainly point you to the right place on the CF Canada webpage. And I believe with that, I'm going to turn it over to Paul, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so thank you, Jana. That was great, and it was nice that Lisa mentioned the registry, and then you added a little bit more there, and then we heard from Stephanie as well, who leads the registry. And the last thing I wanted to do was, I'll just click here and highlight some of the publications that have used the registry data over the past several years to do important CF research. And Actually, if you look at some of the names there, you're going to see Lisa's name here on this publication, for example. And Canadian researchers have looked at certain communities and looked in the registry to see how many individuals have CF and some of the characteristics there. There's been work done looking at the benefits of newborn screening, looking at certain infections and the data related to that, and doing comparisons to how well people are doing in Canada versus the United States, for example. And as well, this publication here was looking at if introduction of Trikafta is delayed, what is going to be the impact on people with CF, and really use the registry data. And we were also able to use the registry data in our advocacy efforts to go forward and help bring Trikafta to Canadians, and that was a real success story as well. So the registry itself is an amazing research tool that is having real impacts on people with CF as well. And now I think I turn it back to Jana.
Yes, I think I'm going to introduce you, Erin. So we really wanted to get some real life examples of how clinicians are using the clinic incentive grants. And so super excited. We have with us today Erin Fleisher, who's a nurse practitioner at the London Health Science Centre Children's Hospital in the Division of Respiratory Medicine. And Erin's also the chair of the CF Canadian Nursing Advisory Committee. So I'll turn it over to you, Erin.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me speak tonight. CF has been a career-long love of mine, and I have worked with our local chapter members in the past and in the present as well. So thank you so much to all of you volunteers and everything that you do to help support all of the amazing work that we're able to do on the front lines. So the Pediatric Cystic Fibrosis Clinic at the Children's Hospital in London has been the recipient of the CF Canadian Clinic Incentive Grant for numerous years. We're very fortunate to be the beneficiaries of this grant, as it allows us to complete important work within the clinic, as well as to stay current and with the most up-to-date CF research literature that's available to us. Next slide, please. So the incentive grant allows members of our multidisciplinary team to attend the yearly North American Cystic Fibrosis Conference every year. This conference is an excellent resource for each member of our team, as the content provided is both quite general with respect to cystic fibrosis, but it's also very specialized to each of the health disciplines, which is very important for all of us in the team, you know, our dietitians, social workers, physiotherapists, myself as a nurse, and our physicians. We're able to attend sessions that present the most up-to-date research and the trends that go along with that. This ensures we're increasing our knowledge and skills and maintaining the best practices for our patients. So as an example, I've personally attended the conference for many years. And over the past several years, I've really enjoyed attending the sessions leading up to Trikafta and seeing the progression of all of the different modulators as they've come along, and all of the other amazing drugs that are also still in the pipeline that are going to make really big differences in the lives of our patients as they kind of come out and we continue to do research. The other important aspect of us being able to attend this conference is that it's a really fantastic opportunity to network not only with those within our disciplines from across both Canada, the United States, but also worldwide. And it also allows us to network with our Canadian colleagues who we don't always get to see. We have networks within email to discuss things with each other, but we don't have the opportunity very often to meet face to face or even via Zoom, so that we can talk about what's happening within Canada. So during the conference, we're able to participate in both discipline-specific Canadian meetings, which is fantastic, along with the Canadian Clinics meeting. Additionally, quite often there are meetings that are organized for those Canadian clinic sites that are participating in those multi-site research studies that we've been hearing about, and it allows the primary investigator to update us on the progress of those studies. Next slide, please. Furthermore, the incentive grant provides support to have a dedicated person who can input clinic data for those patients enrolled into the CF registry. This work is important as the registry not only informs the progress of CF care within Canada, but it is also used as a database, as you've heard, for many of the other important studies that are occurring across the country. Clinics across the country are utilizing the CF registry on a daily basis to find eligible patients for their clinical trials, identify patients who may be eligible for certain drugs, utilizing patient summaries prior to their clinic visits so that we can have kind of a broad overview of what's been happening with their care, assess overall trends and demographics within each of our own individual clinics, which can also help then lead to identifying potential quality improvement projects that would make the work that we do in each of our local clinics that much better and better serve our patients that we have. So again, thank you so much for letting me chat, and always happy to talk about the work that we do in our clinic.
All right. Well, thank you so much to Paul, Lisa, Jana, and Erin for joining us tonight and sharing the impact that volunteers can have on our mission programs. In case you don't know me, my name is Patricia McLaughlin. I'm the Regional Director for Ontario. And I have the pleasure of working with many of our volunteers who fill charitable gaming shifts, and all of our regional Ontario team, all of the staff fill shifts as well. So as you can see, there are select cities across Ontario which partner with Ontario Lottery and Gaming, and that also includes Rama Gaming, has several locations. So the way it works is we send volunteers in for shifts. They can go in for a 2-hour shift, and these shifts can raise approximately $1,000. So what happens is there are several charities that are part of each bingo or gaming hall, and the proceeds from each hall each month are divided between all of the charities depending on how many shifts they fill. So on here you can see it says volunteering for a shift can raise approximately $1,000. We actually have some locations where it's more than $2,000 for 1 2-hour shift. So it really varies. We also vary in the types of locations we have. Some are OLG, some are independent, and those independent ones work a little differently. Shifts occur throughout the month, and we try in each area to have a team of volunteers so we can rotate the shifts. And really, there are 2 locations in Kitchener and Kocourek, where it's actually you're selling tickets and doing that kind of thing. But at nearly every other location, which we'll go through in a little while, you're there to greet and thank guests. You're just there to represent the charity and just to support the staff as needed. So it's really great to, on this webinar, I see a few volunteers of ours, including Arash and Megan, who volunteer for us regularly at shifts in Toronto and Ottawa. But we also have someone here, Roisin Brannigan, and Roisin is particularly an amazing charitable gaming volunteer because Roisin is volunteering at 2 different locations. She volunteers at Toronto and at Brampton. So we wondered if Roisin would say a few words just to let you know what the experience is like volunteering as a charitable gaming ambassador.
Thanks, Patricia. Yeah, I've been volunteering for bingo for a few months now, and it's honestly the easiest fundraising I've ever done. I'm sure many of you know the efforts that we put in during walk season, and it just raises so much funds, and it's really lovely to get to meet with other volunteers for CF Canada as well. And you can bring friends, can bring partners, you can get other people to volunteer. That's really what we're trying to do. It's not like super exciting work, but it's nice to interact with other people. And yeah, I just can't speak about how easy it is. It's really lovely. It just, we get to raise so much money through it, and I like doing it quite a bit. It's nice to interact with the staff, and most of the people who come to the halls are nice and they have questions about your charity. You just get to spread the good word.
Great, thank you so much, Roisin. And I've had the pleasure of volunteering with Roisin at one of the shifts. So it really is. It's a good way to spend 2 hours. All right, so Paul, I'll just get you to go to the next slide. So if from all you've heard tonight, I mean, the amounts are absolutely incredible, and hearing, from Erin and Lisa the actual impact that these funds have. I'm hoping that you may be interested yourself, or that you may know of other people who may be interested. So one thing to keep in mind is anyone who's going to volunteer as a charitable gaming ambassador does have to be 18 years of age. So unfortunately, that does rule out most high school students who are trying to get their 40 hours. But it's a great opportunity to, to volunteer and to get some experience in that way. So we will post this webinar on Facebook. So if you wanted to share it or just share the information with anyone, please feel free. So I'll just quickly summarize where we currently have charitable gaming happening in the province. If you don't see your area on here, please contact us, because we can work with you to see how we can become one of the charities at your local gaming center. So there's just an application process, and we've done it quite a bit, so we can help you with any of the locations you're looking at. So these are all the locations currently where we have charitable gaming. So for Thunder Bay, Ottawa, or Peterborough, you can contact me as well. Sorry, I'm stopped saying Ottawa, I believe, there. And then for Peel and Niagara, you can contact Joanna. For Toronto, it will be Nikki. And then for Kitchener and for Essex Kent, you can contact Lex. So if you are not interested in charitable gaming, it just isn't the right thing for you, we have so many other ways for you to volunteer. And no matter what way you volunteer, you're making a huge difference, and you're helping us to fund programs, helping us to provide support, and helping us to get access to medication for Canadians living with CF. So Nikki has her email is on there. You can contact her about other opportunities, and we can let you know, events or other ways you can become involved. So now we're going to open it up to see if any of you have any questions, and for any of us. So about any of the things that you've heard tonight, and we are happy to answer those. And if we don't know the answer, we will get the answer for you. I can't see everyone, so if you did have a question or wanted to make a comment, just feel free to start talking. Well, I would say it's a good sign that everyone is still on the call but doesn't have questions, because that must mean you found it interesting and learned a lot. So I know I definitely did, and I really wanted to thank our colleagues in research and healthcare who worked so hard to put this together with us, and who really appreciate all of the work that our volunteers are doing to help them be able to accomplish our mission goals. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a great rest of your night.
Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Bye.